Hello and welcome to this video. Today we're going to go over the books that I read in September and my TBR for October. The first book that I read in September was Obsessed by Ted Dekker. I was not obsessed with this book. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was just kind of okay, middle of the road. The whole basis of this is that you have a character who finds out who his mom was and that she was potentially hiding what they call these Stones of David, which are supposed to be worth like billions of dollars, and he kind of gets obsessed with trying to find them and discover them. And then on the other hand, we have this boy who was the son of a Nazi, I don't remember what his title was, but like Nazi general or something, and he was overseeing this camp where all the Jews were, and the first character that I was talking about, his mom was a Jew in this camp. And so it kind of goes back into the history between their families and then both of these boys trying to find this treasure. I thought it was okay. They talk a lot about like, there's kind of like this cultish thing going on, and they talk a lot about this like power and whatnot, but they don't really ever show it. I don't know, it just felt a little bit lackluster, but it was okay. The next book I read was Designing Your New Work Life. I did actually enjoy this book, even though it was a book club book for work, and you know, those can go one way or the other. This one I actually thought was good. It actually gave a lot of really nice tips for how to kind of like get your work life to a point that you're happy with it, and understand that you don't always have the option of just leaving and finding another job, or just leaving and not having a job for a while. Maybe those aren't options for you, but how to kind of like take your position and maybe modify it a little bit so that you're happier and you have a better fit, or if you know that you're going to quit, how to do it happily, and how to set people up for success after you leave instead of burning all those bridges. It covered a lot of interesting topics, and for me, where I'm at with my work life now, I did think that it was helpful and interesting, and this is one that I could potentially go back to, and I don't know if I would fully reread it, but maybe skim through, maybe mark some things, and definitely take some advice from. There's also exercises that they do in this book, which I think is really nice, because a lot of like self-help books, they don't really, like, they tell you principles and you learn a lot, but they don't necessarily tell you how to implement them or give you ways to implement it personally in your own life. And this does give you some exercises that you can do to kind of help you see how these principles can align with where you are at personally at the moment. So if you kind of need to like spice things up at work, or you're unhappy with where you are, I do recommend maybe checking this out. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. This is, I don't even remember, the 4th book in the Throne of Glass series. I am really loving this series right now. I don't really want to say anything that happens in this book because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't started the series yet, but I did give this 4 stars. After that, I read the Twyford Code, and I gave this 3 stars. This is written by Janice Hallett, who also wrote The Appeal. I thought this was a series, but it's not. So if I said that in previous videos, and I'm pretty sure I did, excuse that, I was wrong. They are by the same author. They have very similar book covers and whatnot, but they are not in a series. As far as I can tell, they seem to be 2 different entities, and you're following different characters. This one, you are following a character who had some interesting things happen in his past. He lost kind of some of his memories as a child, and he's trying to kind of retrace his steps and see if he can figure out what happened to a teacher that kind of just disappeared one day. And there was this book that he was reading, and they think that there's some kind of code tied to this book because she was like a World War II person. They think maybe she was like passing on codes to people. Anyhow, he's trying to retrace all of this after he's gotten out of prison, and he's doing this by using phone recordings. So the entire book is written in phone recordings. So it is interesting, but I did like how The Appeal worked better because you had like newspaper clippings, you had text messages, emails, you had like more of a variety of how information was being portrayed versus all of this just being voice messages basically to himself. And then you have other characters, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to follow because you have like character 1, 2, and 3 in a recording, and they don't necessarily always tell you who is who, but a lot of times you can kind of figure it out. It was okay, but it didn't blow me away. The next book I read was Miss Peregrine's Museum of Wonders. I did really enjoy this book. It is one of those where it's like, there's not really a plot. It's just kind of taking a world that the author has already fleshed out and built and just giving you information. So it's, for example, it's telling you how to conduct oneself in the present, the dangers of being exposed as a peculiar, and there's just like a lot of pictures. It talks about kind of the culture peculiarity and things like that. So it is interesting. I think if there weren't a lot of pictures and visual images, it wouldn't have been nearly as interesting, but I think for what it was really good. So I gave it a 4 stars. But like, I have a hard time when it comes to rating sometimes because this being a 4 stars is definitely not the same thing as Queen of Shadows being a 4 stars, right? So like this, I am comparing to other books that I have read that just tell you about a world. I am not comparing it to things like Queen of Shadows. Those are 4 stars for very different reasons. And I have a hard time explaining why, but it's just kind of a feeling. Anyhow, on to the next book. After that, I read Paper Towns. This was on my TBR 2 months in a row, but I did finally get to it this month, and this was actually a really good book. It was better than I was expecting. This book follows this boy as he's kind of trying to figure out how one of his friends just kind of disappeared. So they were childhood friends when they were little, and they kind of grew apart, and I think they're now in high school, and they kind of reconnected, and then right after that, she just disappears. It doesn't come to school. Because she's kind of done this before, the police aren't looking into it too much because technically she's 18, so she's an adult. She's allowed to leave the house on her own, and they think because she's disappeared multiple times before, she probably just ran away again, and, you know, there was nothing malicious behind it. But he's trying to figure out where his friend went and kind of following these clues that she's left for him, or so he thinks. It is an interesting book. It's a really easy read inside. It's like the word spacing is just nice. You know, some books, they have nice, easy to read word spacing. In other ones, it's not so friendly. But this was a good one to read as I was starting to get sick, because it was just one of those that are super easy to blow through. Like, you can just read it quickly and easily. It's easy to digest. It's easy to understand what's happening without having to put a lot of thought into it. There is this one character who calls women honey bunny, and that really kind of annoyed me, but also, like, would a teenage boy be doing that? Maybe. I don't know. I was never a teenage boy, but it's just like, ugh. It kind of gave me the ick, you know? But overall, the book was pretty good, and I gave it 4 stars. Okay, with that done, let's get on to the books that I plan to read in October. So first I'm going to start with the books that I've already started reading. The first one is David Copperfield. I've been listening to this as an audiobook, but I do also have it physically, so I can kind of alternate as I'm feeling it. So the book, it kind of follows this kid named David Copperfield, and it kind of follows his entire story growing up. He spends his early years in relative happiness with his loving but frail mother and their kindly housekeeper, but when he's 7, his mother remarries, and there's a lot of conflict between David and this new guy in his life. This guy keeps getting on him about his studies, and eventually David bites him, which, you know, isn't a good look. So he gets sent away to boarding school, and then you just kind of like follow things after that. It's interesting. I think currently where I am, well, I don't really want to say. He's met this other family of his. He's kind of like run away and gone to other family, and he's kind of being taken care of, which is great, but I'm interested to see where the story goes from that. The reason I'm reading this is because I recently bought Demon Copperhead, and I would like to read that, but I heard that it's kind of like a modern day version of David Copperfield, so I felt like I should read this before reading that. The next book that I'm working on is his short story collection. I've been trying to read a short story just like here and there randomly, but I would really like to be done reading this book and just like be done with it. So I think maybe when I'm finished reading the next book that I'm about to show you that I'm currently reading, I might just try to read like a short story a day and hopefully get through it in October. The next book I'm reading this month is Slewfoot, and I am reading this for its like fall spooky vibes. This is something that I think I bought over the summer, but I knew I didn't want to read it until it felt like fall here, because I think sometimes the atmosphere that you read a book in can really determine how you feel about a book. And this is one that just like felt inappropriate to read during the summer, if that makes sense. So we're finally reading it now, and I'm about halfway through so far and loving it. Basically, we're in this Puritan town where this girl has kind of been forced to marry this man, and you're seeing their relationship and you're seeing how she fits into this town. She doesn't fit in very well because her mom was a cunning woman, which is basically, it seems like witchcraft of a sense, like using herbs and roots and things as remedies and making like potions or whatever, which isn't really witchcraft, but that's how it's viewed in this Puritan town. And so she's kind of bartering some of that stuff to some of the people in order to get payment, because they owe her husband's brother money for their farm. And so they're trying to pay him off so that they can own the farm themselves. But basically in this Puritan town, she has no rights. She's not allowed to speak about any business matters or anything like that. And she's trying to like coach her husband to stand up for himself and speak when injustices happen to them and say like, hey, that's not right. Anyhow, something happens to him and she's struggling with her life just in general. And at the same time, there is this thing, this like, I don't know, what do they call him? It's like a demon, a devil, I don't know, something like that. Gets kind of like resurrected on her property, and they come into contact with each other, and she kind of starts to make a deal with him. And so far, I don't know what's going to happen after that. Usually great things don't happen after you make a deal with the devil, so I'm really interested to see where the story takes us. The next book is Say the Right Thing by Kenji Yoshino. This is a book about just how to talk about identity, diversity, and justice. This was a book that I got for free from work. But we are traveling a bit this next month in October. We're going to go to Florida, and that plane ride's like 5-6 hours. So I feel like I can finish this entire book on the plane ride. And so my plan is to bring this with me and just read the whole thing. I really like having books to read on planes, and I don't like traveling with huge books because it's just really heavy when you're walking around the airport. But something like this, I think I can read in the entire flight and then just put in my suitcase for the way back and bring like a second small-ish book with me on the plane. So we'll see how that goes. This book, which I'm also hoping will be a plane book, is Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. I haven't read anything by Chloe Gong before, but I've heard good reviews for this book. I think if I remember correctly, there are these like games and people can jump between different bodies. And so like you can partner up with people. And the issue though is that they can jump from different bodies. So you're always trying to figure out like, okay, are you the person that I partnered with but in a different body? Or are you someone that I can trust? Like, do I actually know who you are? So it sounds interesting, but I don't know really a whole lot more about it than that, but I'm intrigued to get to it. And it seems like something that should be easy enough to get to. Again, this is one that has really nice spacing in the lines. So it should be able to hold my attention. I should be able to breeze through it. Probably on my flight back from Florida or to Florida. I don't know. It'll be coming with me regardless. And the last book, which I don't have physically, but I'm listening to as an audiobook right now, is The Assassin's Blade, which is part of the Throne of Glass series. I'm kind of taking a break from the series and reading it's like prequel short stories, I guess, because Libby doesn't have the other books as an audiobook, and I've been mostly listening to them as an audiobook, but The Assassin's Blade is an audiobook. So while I'm reading some other books physically, I am listening to that, and then I'll get back into the main part of the series at some point. I think Audible has the audiobooks for the rest of the series, so I might just end up buying them on audiobook, but I do physically own the next book, so I might just read that physically once I finish, I think, like, Slewfoot and the short story book. I might just pick that up and read it physically because I am loving that series. I adore the characters, and I'm just really interested to see where it goes. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. I'm excited to get into these books, and I'm loving that fall is here. I love the fall so much, maybe more than other seasons, but I don't know. I think that's the one thing I love about living in Washington State is that we do have seasons. Like you can definitely feel when it's fall, when it's spring, when it's winter, when it's summer. We do have a lot of rain, that is true, but we do have beautiful seasons and lots of greenery and lots of trees that turn yellow and orange and red. And it's just such a beautiful time of year. And it's such a cozy time of year to just spend your time reading. So anyway, let me know if there are any books that I need to add to my TBR. And I will see you on the next one. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Bye!